Psychological hazards can exist in any workplace in the province. They may look different and present themselves in different ways, but it is a risk in all types of workplaces. We are talking about mental health more and more because of the link between our physical health and our mental health. The World Health Organization told us in 1979 that there is no health without mental health. It has taken us 44 years to really understand that critical connection. Never has the case for mental health awareness and promotion of good mental health in the workplace been so important in the history of occupational health and safety. This week, we have educated you in ways that you can improve work environments and relationships in the workplace to reduce the risk of psychological harm. Thank you for attending. 911 was launched as a national suicide prevention line. If you or someone you know may be at risk, please call or text. It is a safe place to talk 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Bear Brinson, and I'm so happy that you have joined me this morning, the last day of the week and the last day of January, the longest month of the year, isn't it? So happy Friday, and I am so glad that you're here. Before we begin, just a few little housekeeping items to review with you. As usual, in the materials section, you will find a PDF copy of the presentation that you can download during the webinar. Asking questions will definitely be encouraged. I'm interested to have your participation throughout this webinar. If you'd like to ask me a question, just type them into your questions window, and I will respond at the end of the presentation. If we run out of time, I'll certainly get back to you and your questions and comments in an email. At the end of the webinar, you will receive an evaluation. I encourage you to complete the evaluation as it certainly helps us to continue developing relevant and meaningful webinars. Remember, throughout the presentation, it's going to be about an hour to stand, stretch, to give your body the opportunity to change postures and to get your blood flowing. Make sure you're comfortable. As you'll see, closed captioning can be enabled on your screen by clicking the closed captioning button. So today we are going to talk about the mindful workplace and the key roles that create a mindful workplace. This presentation is for all parties in the workplace. We're going to provide some really great tips and suggestions for both workers and for the employers to consider. This presentation, of course, will not be all encompassing. There's just really too much to cover in 1 hour, but there's going to be something for everyone. And if after this presentation you are interested in having more information, then please feel free to reach out. First of all, I want to share with you that there is never going to be only one right way to create a psychologically healthy and safe workplace. It's going to depend on a lot of different factors. For example, it could depend on what type of workplace you have, the type of work you do, the industry, the resources available in your workplace, even the location of your work. The most important thing is that we be on the journey and that we are moving forward. And that's going to be a journey of continual improvement. So, throughout this week, if you have had the opportunity to attend, we have talked about some of the benefits of being a mindful workplace. One that's goal is to be a psychologically healthy and safe space for everyone that's there. So I'm just going to ask you to take one moment to write one benefit that if you have been able to participate this week, that you learned during the week, or that you can think of that would be a benefit to creating a psychologically healthy and safe workplace that's mindful for everyone. So I'm just going to give you that uh, just moment to place in the chat something that you think is a benefit of a psychologically healthy and safe workplace. And Tina's going to share some of those with me, and then I'll read them out to you. Okay, so we've got some great options coming in there. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, some really great stuff. Let's look at that. So, someone said creating good boundaries. It helps you to take time for yourself. It displays compassion in the workplace, the ability to disconnect from work after working all day. clear expectations, a better work life, increased communication. These are fabulous, fabulous benefits. And I really, really appreciate right off the bat everybody sharing that with me. So these are, as I said, great benefits. And I think that it's important for us to start here. Some of the things that I thought about when I was developing this presentation and doing some research and just thinking about the benefits of a psychologically safe workplace, I thought about how it can reduce absences from the workplace. And that's something really important to to employers and workplaces right now. It improves customer experience and the quality of our engagement with customers and coworkers. It increases the diversity of staff teams, and also it increases employee engagement. No matter what, I think it's really important that we start there with the benefits so that we can really, think about the impact that a psychologically healthy and safe workplace makes. No matter what our role is in the workplace, the benefits extend to all and they impact everyone. So, mindful is defined as paying close attention to or being especially conscious of something. Today, we're going to talk about a mindful workplace. So, that's one where all parties are especially conscious or thoughtful of what they are doing to make the workplace safe, respectful, and mutually beneficial for all. Creating a mindful workplace, one that has two key parties, as we saw at the beginning, where we're going to talk about the mindful workplace, the mindful employer, and the employee. It is a shared responsibility. Yes, we know that employers have a legislated role to protect the health, safety, and welfare of workers while they're at work, but we all contribute and we all have a role to play. Both the organization and workers have shared responsibilities for maintaining and then improving health and safety and well being at work. The safest and healthiest workplaces, I think we all know, are those where both parties are committed to this goal. As those of us that may have been here yesterday for the webinar heard, individuals are responsible for their own mental well being, their own overall well being, but employers are required to do no harm. So let's start today with looking at how to become a mindful employer. A mindful employer is one that actively promotes employees' overall well being. They foster mental health awareness and create a supportive environment. It's one that promotes growth and reinforces the significance of the work that's being done. They create a workplace that prioritizes employees' physical, emotional, and psychological needs. So, a mindful workplace is a workplace that pays close attention to how work and the work environment is impacting a worker's overall well being. Leaders are often in frequent contact with employees on their team, which means that leaders make a significant impact on our overall work experience. Leaders have the ability to impact how employees feel, how productive they are, and how safe they are in the workplace. Mindful leaders generally want employees to trust them, to lead them well, to care about them as not just an employee, but as a person, and to support them in the work that they do. This presentation today won't be able to be a complete overview of the challenges or the hazards that may be faced in the workplace, and it's not going to be a complete guide. But what we are going to share is some really great tips and ways that employers and leaders, and then we'll look at the employees, can create a more mindful workplace. How we can pay that closer attention to how employees are being impacted either positively or negatively in the workplace by the work that they do and the environment. So, step one is first of all, making that commitment, realizing that it has to be a workplace priority to think about and consider psychological health and safety. Then, once you make that commitment, you want to share it and you want to communicate it throughout your organization. It's important to share it through a variety of means. Post it, talk about it often when recruiting, when onboarding new staff, or regularly in team meetings. It's important to provide regular updates to staff on what work is actually being done to tangibly act on creating a psychologically healthy and safe workplace. And I think it's important to encourage feedback and involvement. Look for natural champions among your team. I think they exist everywhere. People that are generally just interested and motivated to care about mental well being. So look for those natural champions among your team and enlist them to help. And as a leader, as an employer, lead by example. Actively encourage your team to adopt healthier work habits by actually displaying them yourself. Work reasonable hours. Take your lunch breaks and your breaks. Rest and recuperate after busy periods at work. And make sure you enjoy vacations, time off, weekends, and statutory holidays. What we do will impact our workers far more even than what we say. Educate yourself on mental It's important to educate yourself on mental health and health literacy. It's another important step for an employer to create a mindful workplace is to increase their own awareness and the workplace's awareness of mental health. There's so much valuable information and education out there, and I think it's fairly easy right now for most people to learn and to gain some knowledge on what mental health is and the importance of it. Um, as a leader, it's important to avoid sharing your assumptions or maybe even misinformation about the topic of mental health. That can really lead to the problem of stigma. And a leader should make mental health a topic of conversation in the same ways that you would share about other important topics in the workplace. So consider providing opportunities for staff to complete mental health awareness training. And really importantly, make sure that leaders of people, so people leaders, have training and understanding about mental health and its impact in the workplace. Having conversations about mental health can certainly be challenging. We recognize that, especially if you're not used to talking about it. It can be easy maybe to think about, well, what if I say the wrong thing? What if my advice doesn't help? What if it makes it worse even? But I would suggest that you don't let that get in the way of getting a conversation started. No matter what aspect of mental health or mental well being discussed, remember all of us are human and we all have mental health and we all experience periods of struggle. And we are all people whose well being is valuable. Our mental health is really worth prioritizing at work. I would encourage you as an employer or a leader to maintain regular contact with each employee on your team, not only to see how maybe projects are progressing or how work is going, how tasks are going, but to discuss what might be causing them stress. Create opportunities for them to ask you questions and discuss concerns that they may have. It's important to allow them to talk about personal issues at work and uh, at things that they're experiencing at work or maybe even at home if they are comfortable doing that. But it's important to intentionally create space in the day to day for those conversations. Conversations that send the signal that mental health is valued and it is a priority at work. Those conversations, you may feel a little overwhelmed as a leader, but those conversations don't need to take a lot of time. But they do, however, really need to take intention and practice before they are consistent. Here's a few examples of how you can increase awareness of mental health and create the space to make sure those conversations happen. So, number one, maybe schedule a regular one-on-one check-ins with your direct report. So the people that you are directly managing or supervising. So I would say ideally maybe aim for at least one conversation every week that takes about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the team size and the need. Maybe if you have a smaller team, you'd be able to do a little bit more of that. For those focusing on for those conversations, really try to focus on offering support, identifying the challenges that they might be facing, and helping them name or come up with solutions. A great couple of questions maybe that you can ask is, what's going well with work this week, or what's challenging you right now, and what can I do for you today? What do you need from me? So the other thing on top of having those one-on-one check-ins is really holding team discussions and making space in those team discussions to talk about mental health and how everybody is feeling, their psychological well-being is at work. So maybe set aside 10 minutes within your team meeting or your staff meeting on the agenda to chat as a group about some of the things that we've talked about. So you can add it as an agenda topic at staff meetings to make sure that people feel comfortable to talk about their well-being. And that might be new for you. That might be something new that you can try. It's important as a leader to know what resources are available to you and also to your staff. So I would encourage you to communicate the resources and the support that are available and make sure that they are really easy to access for employees. If employees are struggling or if they're um, in a challenging situation, it may be hard to find those resources. So the more we can communicate them and make them readily available, the more likely that the employees will think about that or know where to look when they are in some sort of a crisis. So as an employer, you should become familiar with mental wellness supports and resources that are available in our province or in our community. Become familiar with the workplace supports. Maybe you have an employee family assistance program or different employee benefits. So make sure you understand that those so you can supportively talk to employees when they need it the most. But please remember that support for mental health and mental health issues is more than just an EAP program. It's actually a wide spectrum from early intervention or identifying early signs that someone might be struggling to absence management and then reintegration or return to work if they've had a period of time off work. Rather than only providing a single reactive support option, for when someone is struggling, organizations can really benefit from a mechanism to support employees at all levels connect with the right supports at the right time. Organizations should really focus on training leaders to recognize the signs of poor mental health and connect employees to appropriate supports. It's important that employers developed accommodation and return to work programs that can effectively support employees who have been off work or need some assistance if they have a health related disability. If you keep an eye on our schedule for webinars for 2025, we are going to do a session on accommodation for mental health challenges. So make sure staff feel understood and make sure staff understand their role and that they feel valuable in the workplace. Recognize employees as individuals. It's important to treat employees with respect and acknowledge their work, their achievements, and their behavior. Listen to them and attempt to adapt your management style to suit the needs of each individual employee. Everyone needs a little bit different, a little bit something different from their supervisors or their managers. And how you can find that out really is ask the employees, ask for feedbacks about the support you provide and what they like or the ways maybe you could improve in order to help them achieve their goals and the goals of the organization. So some suggestions you could consider are ensure that staff understand the purpose of their role. Make sure they understand how they contribute to the organization. Agree on clear objectives and explain how those objectives will contribute to the wider organizational goals. Have a robust onboarding or orientation program and make sure there is quality performance review processes in place. It's important that staff receive regular feedback, including praise and areas where they can develop. And generally, employees will invite that feedback and also be able to provide that feedback in return. And understand then that that is taken seriously and it is seen as a valuable part of the workplace. Another tip is to provide growth opportunities. Ensure that that's done fairly amongst all employees, that everybody has the ability to invest, everybody's skills are invested in, and that really helps to build an employee's confidence and their skill set. See growth and training opportunities as an investment in your workers and also into your workplace. Take steps to minimize excessive stress. So let's just take a second right now to think about our own workplace and maybe what causes stress. So that might be different depending on the type of work you do, the workplace you're in. But I would imagine, I can't see you, but I can imagine that all of you right now can think about someone or something in your workplace that causes either you stress or you know that it causes someone else stress in the workplace. And then I want you to think about, well, is there a way that you can think of that you'd be able to reduce that stress? Is the pressure on the work or the pace of the work completely necessary? If yes, if they are necessary, then are there more resources needed or is there a way to make more efficiencies so that we can minimize the excessive stress? So I'd like you to take time to consider even how a leadership approach might impact employees' risk of burnout. It's important to consult with staff, and they'll help you identify sources of workplace stress. Discuss individually and then even amongst your teams how best to minimize and manage the stress. And I think that employees will always have ideas in how that can be done and how they can help see efficiencies that can be made in the workplace. So it's really important to establish a culture where staff feel they're able to ask for support and that they can admit when they're struggling. That really helps to minimize excess workplace stressors. So how you may be thinking, well, how can I do that? How can I make staff feel comfortable to ask for support? Well, I think the key first is telling employees that it's okay. That it's okay to ask for support. Make it known that it's okay to say, I'm struggling and I would like a little bit of support and help. So when they do ask, it's important that as a leader, you do support them. You take that seriously. And maybe you avoid saying things like, well, that's all we can do right now, or just do what you can do. Instead, take time to listen and really help them come up with an action plan that works for the overall organization and for the employee themselves. If you're looking for some practical guidance in how to do these things, how to deal with excessive workplace stressors, maybe like performance management or uh, workloads, then I would just encourage you to look at workplace strategies for mental health. Tina's actually going to pop that website link in the chat for those of you that are interested. But that resource, and if you've ever attended a workshop I've done, or a webinar that I've done, I always mention it because it has literally hundreds of free evidence-based resources that are fabulous for both people leaders and employees. So Tina has that, I'm sure, put in the chat right now. And if you just want to pop that into your notes, and don't forget to favorite that site. It is definitely something that as a leader, especially, you can really utilize. Take a close look at workloads. And that can be, certainly a challenge. But if workload is reported as an issue in your workplace, or if you are aware that it is an issue, or even if you're seeing signs of employee burnout, it's important to take a close look at workloads. So when employees are exceptionally busy or stressed with work, there are several things that you can do as a leader to ease their stress. First of all, you can help them prioritize the work that they have to do. Ensure the work assigned to them is clearly defined and they understand exactly what is asked of them and how they can achieve it. Communicate clearly what the expectations are and make sure that the deadlines that are given are reasonable and in a reasonable time frame. So I think supports like that, and again, just having the conversation about, what you can do to support workers, that really helps employees keep a bit of autonomy in the workplace while they still feel supported, valued, and needed. It's important to establish systems as well for reviewing workloads on a regular basis and setting realistic priorities and objectives. Be alert to how employees be alert, sorry, to the employees that might be overworking. They might be taking work home on a regular basis or working through their breaks or even not taking their annual leave. And it's really important to have a lens on that and to make sure that you have conversations when that is occurring. So another one that's really important is investing in increasing the competencies of those leading or supervising. High quality leadership is really essential for the well-being of workers in our workplaces today. There's so many different theories about maybe the best style of leadership, and really that amounts to, I guess, preferences. But to truly succeed, I think it's important that organizations have a mechanism to ensure the leadership that they have are cultivating the needs and expectations of their employees, and that they're increasingly looking at gaining competencies in those levels, in those areas, sorry. An important skill to develop is the ability to focus on the employee's strengths while supporting productivity and performance. This is particularly effective when working with employees who may be experiencing a mental health issue. Another thing that's really important is to encourage an inclusive workplace culture and an environment of dignity and respect. Work to actively tackle barriers that may prevent colleagues from sharing mental health concerns at an early age. And a lot of that is that conversation, uh, you know, stating that commitment to a psychologically healthy and safe workplace. Have a way for employees to report where there are issues with inclusion or discrimination or harassment and bullying, and make sure employees understand if they do report something like that, what the process is that will occur. Consider positive actions to increase diversity and make the workplace fair for disadvantaged or underrepresented groups. Sometimes things that employers can do is arrange an event or activities that celebrate diversity and acknowledge diversity and inclusion in the workplace and help cultivate a culture of caring, compassion, and understanding. As we know, employers are responsible to have a system in place to identify, assess, and control workplace hazards. And yesterday, we actually had a full 1 hour webinar that talked about psychosocial hazards and how to connect the dots and how that, can increase or decrease stress in the workplace. And as I mentioned, this webinar is not able to encompass everything that an employer can do, but I think it's really important that we gave all of those tips, but that we end off talking about an employer's role and what they can do to contribute to or create a mindful workplace, is that we make sure that we mention that whatever we do, the system that we create must include assessing all types of hazards in the workplace, which could have negative consequences to an employee's health, safety, and well-being. And that has to include psychosocial hazards. And psychosocial hazards should be managed the same as we manage, as we've gotten comfortable and good at managing other physical health and safety hazards. And that's through a health and safety program. And that can be integrated or should be integrated into the organization's broader business practices. Like a healthy health and safety management systems, organizations should have a way to identify and then take action to address any risks that are identified that could impact the psychological health and safety of workers. So, some common risks that we talked about yesterday were excessive workloads, bullying, incivility, low job control, not having autonomy or control over the way you do your work, or it could be poor workplace relationships or conflict. Mitigation strategies are varied as much as the risk really themselves are, but the mechanism to making sure that they are dealt with is really making sure that there is a reporting process for psychosocial hazards built into the regular way we report other health and safety issues. And it's important to make sure that a regular risk assessment process is conducted to make sure that we are identifying any of those hazards that could have a risk to employees' well-being. And of course, that encompasses the physical hazards as well. So, those are some tips that I wanted to share with you on what an employer can do. There are so many more. As I said, we're not able to cover everything, but I just want to give you an opportunity before we shift to what employees can do in a mindful workplace. I just want you to to have a moment to tell me what you think. If there's any other ideas that you want to share, and I'm just going to ask you to maybe pop them in the chat, and then I'm going to just have a look at those, and I'll share some of the things that you came up with as well. So I'll just give you a second maybe to pop that in. I may have said chat. Perhaps it's the question. I think it's the question in the answer box, but just something you think that an employer should focus on, when it comes to being a mindful employer. Okay, so a couple of people said just communicating respectfully, being considerate of an employee's feelings, recognizing them as a person as well as an employee, considering being a good listener as a leader. I think that's so valuable. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for your suggestions. Oh, another one just came in. I just want to say it's following up on promises, following up on things that the employer committed to do. And I think those things are really, really important. Okay, so thanks so much. So let's move on now to talk a little bit about the employee's role. Let's look at the mindful employee. With the right practical tips, you can contribute to the mindfulness. You can incorporate mindfulness into your workday, and that will help you contribute to your overall well being and that of the workplace. Mindful in this context that we're going to talk about today is really being aware of how you as a worker impacts your own experience and how we also impact the experience of those around us. Mindfulness can help employees cope with organizational change. And these days, as we know, change is a predominant feature of the workplace. So, mindfulness in the workplace is important for a variety of reasons. When something challenging happens at work, a mindful employee will not simply react and judge what is happening emotionally, but rather they're able to consider it with a more adaptive approach or an adaptive stance. So, by addressing change or challenges with that more proactive approach, the employee will likely feel themselves more satisfied with their work. As we know, chronic stress is a huge problem in society today, especially in the workplace. That really carries into the workplace. So mindfulness is so important because it really can help us truly combat and manage our own stress. Many of us are trying to be mindful, I think, in our own lives in general, because we know the benefits to both our physical and our mental well being. And those same practices can be really integrated into our workday and our work life in a very beneficial way. So, what is a mindful employee? It is one that works with calmness, clarity, and adequate mental energy. They have thoughtful interactions and they value workplace well being. A mindful employee contributes to the workplace by being psychologically healthy and safe for all. So, a mindful employee generally can take in what's happening in the workplace and not emotionally react to it. Rather, they simply take the information in from their surroundings and they can approach their work and their relationships with other colleagues and managers without judgment. With some tips that we're going to go through, you can incorporate mindfulness in your own workday and help to cultivate calmness and clarity. You can improve your mental performance, your energy, and your overall workplace well being with these tips. So, I'm going to say, as a disclaimer, some of these suggestions that I have today will not work for all of you because of your work environment and how your work is structured. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is be open minded and look for the suggestions that can help you and will work in the situation you currently have. How you show up in your workplace really matters. So let's explore some of the ways that you can show up in a way that impacts the workplace for everyone in a positive way. So let's start with a little self awareness assessment. So I'm going to get you to just take a second and think about these questions. Am I completely happy with how I show up in the workplace? Am I happy with how I feel at the end of my workday? Do I feel productive and accomplished? Am I bringing my best self, my most respectful self, to work both for myself and for my coworkers? If there's room for improvement in how you feel about your current work situation, I would ask you to uh, start considering some small, gradual improvements and be patient while you look for the impacts of your efforts. Let's start with making gradual improvements to your workday. So when we do a little self-awareness assessment and we say, am I completely happy with how I show up in the workplace? The answer can be, yes, I'm definitely trying my best. So let's start with thinking about your schedule. I think it's really important to be intentional about your schedule, the parts of your schedule that you have control over. Um, Something to think about is maybe schedule opportunities where you have focused work without distractions. We're also distracted these days with, our phones, our email, all the things that are happening around us. So it's really important to have some specific time where we check in on our emails and we respond to messages, but also that we have some time to really focus on the work that we're doing. Another great tip maybe is to start taking a minute at the beginning of your day to go over your schedule for the day so you know what's coming. And I know that always makes me feel calmer about my day and about my approach to the day is when I know, the things that, as much as I can, the things that are happening within my control. Uh, a really good thing to think about or to consider is planning your hardest task when you have the most focus or the most energy, if you have that autonomy and that flexibility in your schedule. Some people start the day with a real bang and some start a little slower and they gain momentum as the day goes on. For me, I generally have most mental focus at the beginning of the day, probably thanks to caffeine. But generally, if I have something that's a priority, I try to tick that off in the morning because I know that that's when I'm going to have the most mental energy. If you're someone who doesn't have the autonomy to change how your work schedule or work day is structured, why don't you think about how you start your morning or pre-shift and how you prepare for work. So showing up for work with a clear head, feeling calm, having done the things you need to do to prepare for work and being able to set aside the things that you have going on in your life outside of work often can really have a big influence on your day. So if you feel overwhelmed or rushed at the start of your workday, that can really impact how you react to your coworkers or even your customers or clients, and even have the ability to, ruin some of your concentration on your tasks. Create a mindful workspace where you have the ability to think clearly. So, clutter and unorganized spaces can really have a significant impact on how you feel at work or how you approach a task. A lot of newly designed workplaces and workspaces we'll see are really minimal with more natural light, and they even bring in elements of nature like plants and things like that, because we know that this really impacts. There's a good body of evidence that say that really impacts how we feel and how we think. Uh, where it is in your control, organize your workspace to be clutter free, organized, and that will hopefully help you focus. So maybe at the end of the day, consider taking a few moments to organize your workspace, the part that you have control over, for the next time you come to work. And tidy shared spaces as really an act of kindness to your coworkers. When working on a complex problem or when you feel that you have, way too much to do, it's really easy to convince yourself that you don't have time to take breaks. But I just want to tell you that the research finds that taking a break can be really beneficial to you and your productivity to get your work done. So, micro breaks, lunchtime breaks, or even longer breaks have been really shown to have a positive relationship with overall well being and productivity. By taking regular breaks, you really boost your performance. So, although taking short breaks throughout the workday may not have such an obvious impact as maybe taking a long weekend or a holiday away, research shows that it really still has significant benefits. Studies found that breaks can reduce or prevent stress. It can help you perform better at your job throughout the day. And then it also reduces the need for a long recovery at the end of the day or the end of your work, which is really good because that gives us more time then to do the things outside of work that we enjoy in our life. So I'm going to ask you to thoughtfully consider for a moment what recharges you when you take a break. So maybe for you, having lunch and chatting with colleagues helps you detach from work and feel that little bit of a reprieve. Maybe taking a quiet moment for yourself, sitting, somewhere quiet and reading, or just kind of reflecting on, the day and what's coming up, helps you feel recharged or more energized. For me, it's really getting outside. So when the weather cooperates here in St. John's, it always helps me to refocus and to feel more mental energy if I can get outside for a few moments. So take a look at how you spend your breaks and see if you can use that time maybe in a better way and optimize the time that you have. So if you work on a screen all day, taking a break for your eyes is really important. So I'm going to get you all to join me now to take a really quick little break for our eyes to reduce eye strain. So I'm going to get you to look at something about 20 feet away. If it can be something out a window or outdoors, that's even so much better for you. And we're going to do that for about 20 seconds. So really take your eyes away from your screen to something at least 20 feet away if you can, and just look at that for a few seconds. And what they recommend is that you do that probably every 20 minutes or so, and just give your eyes a break, and you'll really see a difference at the end of the day on the strain at your eyes if you're working from a laptop or sorry, a computer. So something else that's important to think about is if we're multitasking. It's important to not multitask and to practice single tasking. So that is do one thing at a time and then thoughtfully shift to the next task. It makes us feel calmer and not as cluttered or overwhelmed. So if you've ever been in the middle of writing an email or and like all of a sudden you look down and you're also writing your grocery list for on the way home from work, or you're in a meeting and or you're having a conversation and you're also reading your text message that just came in, then you've been guilty of multitasking. And I think we're all guilty of multitasking. So why would I say guilty? Some people think that multitasking is just being super efficient. But a growing body of research has found that it's far less efficient to try to do two things or more at one time than just to focus on the one task and then thoughtfully shift to the other when you are finished. So let's look at how we approach meetings. I think we can all agree there are a lot of meetings in workplaces today. Meetings are definitely an effective way to encourage collaboration, to communicate at one time with, your team members, and hopefully to generate new ideas or solutions. However, it can be really easy to get off track and maybe even over time, which means that a meeting then is not as effective as it should be. So, an effective meeting should flow like a discussion rather than a one sided conversation. It encourages the people involved to bring their takes, their questions to the table. And as a result, you make sure everyone's voice is heard. A well organized a well-organized meeting in which participants follow, agenda, they're practicing active listening, they're prepared for the meeting, they're likely to be more productive and result in positive outcomes and decisions, which is the purpose of the meeting. So if you feel that here's some tips I should say before I move on that I have on the screen for practicing good meeting etiquette. So be on time, have your phone on silent or maybe, just put aside. Make sure you're present in that meeting and you're thinking about what's happening in the meeting, what the discussion is on. Stick to an agenda so that people know the flow of the meeting and when the meeting will be over, what things are going to be talked about. Don't interrupt. Let others, finish their thoughts and what they have to say before you share what you have to say. And use non-offensive language. If you feel that meetings that you're involved with are unproductive or taking you away from the time you have to do work, maybe that's something that you would need to bring up to with your supervisor in a respectful way to talk about how meetings can be more efficient. Interpersonal interactions are really the building blocks of a successful and maybe a harmonious workplace, one that feels mindful and psychologically healthy and safe. So pay attention to your thoughts and feelings when you're interacting with your colleagues or your managers or supervisors, and practice active listening, which I know is really hard when we are busy. Active listening requires that we listen attentively to a speaker. We're trying to understand what it is they're saying and then respond and reflect on what's being said. It's important that when you have a mindful interaction, you're retaining the information as well. So this really helps the listener and the speaker be actively engaged in the conversation. It's important that when we're communicating, we are honest, we are open, and we are polite. And those are, really building blocks of a respectful workplace. When you frame your message in a positive way, if you have something to share with a coworker or in the workplace, maybe a client or a customer, framing it up in a positive way can have a powerful impact in the conversation, and that generally will leave all parties feeling good about the interaction at the end of it. So, for example, if you have to if you're directing a person to do something differently, telling them to stop doing something is really focusing on the negative behavior or the action. And maybe a way to kind of reframe that is requesting them to do an alternate behavior instead. So, for example, instead of, you know, maybe don't leave your dirty dishes in the sink in the lunchroom, but just reframing it to, let's make sure we please clear the common area and we return our dirty dishes to the cupboards or after they're cleaned. Adopting a respectful communication and approach um, in interactions really allows parties to contribute and creates a dialogue that's built on fairness. In a workplace, communication amongst team members and colleagues can often include a social dialogue. So, that's such a great thing, and that really helps to create cohesion amongst your team and build belonging. Which research shows that that feeling of belonging in our workplace is really important. But what we have to make sure is that culture doesn't also lead into gossiping. So, gossiping or sharing information without facts can really lead to a breakdown in the team and in the team relationship, and it can really create a lack of trust. So, even though that's really important to have, the social part of workplace, it is important to consider, how you're communicating and the things you're saying and how your interactions can impact the psychological health and safety of your coworkers. And what we need to remember is that what we do has an impact on the people around us. So look for opportunities for growth. Employees who receive ongoing training and development tend to be more productive and innovative. When you expand your skills and your knowledge, that really helps you contribute effectively and adapt to the changing needs. And I find that opportunities for growth really boost employees' confidence and job satisfaction. So if your workplace offers opportunities to learn new skills or upskill, then really take those opportunities. And I think there's like lots of free, inexpensive ways to upskill even on your own now. So it's really, great to invest in your own growth as well. And another great thing to do maybe is to seek guidance or knowledge for someone in your organization that you admire and that you would like to mentor you. And maybe they have skills that you admire. So maybe that's something that you can look at. I think it goes without saying that we have to make sure that we never engage in disrespectful bullying or harassing behaviors in the workplace, and that we speak up if we witness witness violence, aggressive, or inappropriate behaviors. The other thing I want to mention is just doing a little check in for ourselves. So if you're struggling on a particular day, in being your best self at work, maybe just take a moment to check in with yourself and find out why. Are you worried about something at home? Maybe. Are you tired? Are you hydrated? All of these things really matter. So, according to research, adults say that, or it says that adults should get 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep every night for optimal health. So, lots of people regularly sleep less than that. But Dr. Will Cole, he's an author of best-selling books on health and wellness. He says that there's a significant implication of not only poor, sorry, a significant implication on poor sleep on a person's well-being and their performance at work. And a recent article by Dr. Josh Axe, a functional medical MD, he says that dehydration can impact overall moods and cognitive function, contributing to a lack of not only concentration, but recall, memory, and even self esteem. Well, that makes sense. You know, our brain is 85% made up of water. So simply getting, I shouldn't say simply getting proper rest, but getting proper rest and simply consuming, recommended 8 to 10 glasses of water a day usually is enough to help us to maintain healthy electrolyte levels, feel rested, and come to work as our best self. So those are just two things, sleep and hydration and, worry about the day. But I guess what I'm saying is that if you're not your best self at work, then check in, take care of yourself, make sure you're practicing self-care and recognizing how you show up at your workplace really impacts your experience and it impacts the culture of the workplace and the experience of the people who are your coworkers. So when it comes to being a mindful employee. We've talked about a lot of things. So now I'm interested to hear from you if there are any things that you think of that could be added to this list. So if you wouldn't mind just popping that into your question and answer box and just continuing to share some of your great responses on what else an employee can do to impact the mindful workplace. And I'll just give you a second and grab a glass of drink of water while I wait. So somebody said self-care, making sure that you take care of yourself, um, learning, growing, taking care of your community, volunteering, talking to your supervisor about things that are bothering you. That's a really good one. Self-awareness and compassion. That's so huge. Being self-aware is really important. Another one just came in was mindful of our tone. That is really important. So sometimes geez, the tone of how we communicate can really have an impact on the workers, the people around us that work with us. Having friendships at work, that's so good. Belonging at work is really shown to be really, really important. Getting involved in the social events that your employer offers, those are some really great suggestions. So right before we're going to shift now, sorry, away from the employee, and we're going to look at a scenario. So let's look at this scenario. I have the picture up here, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it in a second. We're going to think about what are some actions that the employer can do and what are some actions that the worker can do to ensure a more mindful workplace where the employees feel supported and the work is able to be done. So a workplace where we're paying close attention to how the workplace can impact the employee's mental well-being. So here we have Sarah, we'll call her, she's the employee. And in Sarah's job, she is sometimes required to deliver bad news that negatively affects a client. The employee, Sarah, has been doing this for several years, and sometimes clients are okay with the news, but there are other times when they can be very upset. So I'm going to ask you to think about some of the things that can be done to make this a more mindful workplace and improve this situation for everyone involved. So this is how we're going to do this. So hopefully you can follow along with me with this. So if you're I'm going to need your participation. I'm going to need you to put some things in the chat. So what I want you to do is if your last name starts with the letters A through M, I want you to think about what are some of the actions the worker can take to protect themselves, to be more mindful, and to make sure that they're not negatively impacted by that situation. So I want you to just take a moment. If you have a pen and piece of paper, maybe you can just jot down them. And I'm going to ask you to put one thing in the chat. So what the worker can do. And you can just say worker ahead of it so that we know that your action is related to what the worker can do. If your last name starts with N, any letter from N to Z, I'm going to ask you to consider this from the perspective of the employer. So, what actions can the employer, the leader, or supervisor take? And again, I want you to think about just two or three things that the employer could do to make this a better situation, to be more mindful and protect the employee from that situation. So when you write that in the chat, I want you to say employer and then your suggestion. So I'm just going to give everybody a minute to think about that, and then I'm going to have a look at the suggestions that you put in the chat. So again, as the employer and as the employee, and just identify that for me. There's some good answers coming in. I'm just going to give you another minute, and well, not a minute, sorry, another few seconds. Some really great suggestions. A lot coming in for the worker. Is there anyone out there who has some more employer suggestions? I'd really appreciate if you could just put those in. There we go. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to read out a few. I really appreciate all of your responses. I won't be able to read them out, but I'm just going to pick a couple. So somebody suggested for the employer, definitely provide training around conflict resolution and dealing with difficult clients. That is an excellent suggestion. Another one for the employer, post signage that disrespectful behavior is not acceptable. That is also a really great suggestion. Another one is for the employer, approach the situation with a neutral, calm perspective. Don't assume you already know the situation. I really like that. Listen to your employees and see what they have to say. I'm really glad to see some of these worker suggestions as well. So let me just read them out. Practice pause before reacting. That's so good. Assure each other. Consult with human resources to align with organizational procedures. That's really good. Thank you. Um, Approach the situation with a calm perspective, and that's really good as well. So I just want to say thank you for the things that you shared there. And I'm just going to go back to the slide again because in my notes there I have a couple of other suggestions. So some things I think maybe the employer can do is make sure Sarah has the training that she needs in de-escalating upset clients. And I think that somebody mentioned that, so that's really good. As a supervisor, maybe check in with Sarah every week to see if she's had any challenging situations and how she's doing. If she has had an agitated client, let her talk about that and how she feels. Do a risk assessment to make sure all of the appropriate controls are in place for preventing workplace violence and harassment. So that's really important, and that is a responsibility of employers in Newfoundland. Have a policy that's communicated to clients that disrespectful behaviors will not be tolerated. Some things the worker can do: participate in the training, report when clients are disrespectful, and tap into workplace resources for supports. So I really appreciate all of your feedback and all of your suggestions. So we're just going to clue up by just summarizing that if you take away any part from this equation, the mindful employer or the mindful employee, then we will not get the result of the mindful workplace. So both parties are important and they both add value to the workplace. So that mindful workplace has two key parties and it is a shared responsibility. Um, as we looked at today, the organization and the workers have that shared responsibility for maintaining and improving the health and safety and well-being of work. Will you do your part? That's my question to you today. Will you do your part? We are right, I think, at the 11 o'clock hour. So I am just going to give I'm going to put up this question opportunity for questions. And if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the question box or the question and answer box, and I will certainly respond to you. I do really appreciate your participation, and I will definitely get back to you for sure. So thank you so much for attending today. Thank you for attending the Psychological Health and Safety Virtual Learning Series if you were able to attend the rest of the week. And today clues up that week. So happy Friday to everyone, and thank you so much for being a part of our day. The Signal is Workplace NL's health and safety podcast, and each episode has different health and safety topics, and it encourages listeners to remain dedicated to workplace health and safety practices. We did release a new episode this week with Jordan Friesen, who was our guest in our webinar as well on Wednesday, and Jordan just has some really great and insightful tips for parties in the workplace on psychological health and safety. So I just encourage you to listen to that. Um, we have a whole slate and schedule of really great webinars this year. So I just ask you to keep in tune with that and to make sure that you register for those that are interesting and applicable to you today and throughout the year. We just want to reach out and let you know that an occupational health and safety educational consultant is available to attend your workplace or provide a virtual presentation, and that is on psychological health and safety or other occupational health and safety topics. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out to us to workshops@workplacenl.ca for more information, and we will be sure to help you with that. Just enjoy the rest of your day. Where I am, it's sunny and a blue sky. So hopefully that helps you get started on the right foot for a great weekend. Thank you so much for attending, and we really appreciate you. Have a great day.